All right, in this video, we're going to move on to section 2.1, which is going to focus on how individuals make choices based on their budget constraints. So this section is going to get more specific. It's going to give you hopefully some practical tools for thinking about economic decisions. We're shifting from the broad idea of scarcity to the constraints that individuals like you and households face when making their choices. And we're going to see that these choices are not made in a vacuum because they're all constrained by limited resources, in this case, the budget. All right. All right, so by the end of this section, these are the learning outcomes. You should be able to calculate and graph budget constraints. You should be able to explain opportunity sets and opportunity costs, which are the trade-offs that we face. Third, you should be able to evaluate the law of diminishing marginal utility. And then you should be able to explain how marginal analysis and utility influence decisions. So let's start with the idea of a budget constraint. A budget constraint represents all possible consumption combinations of goods that someone can afford given the price of those goods when all income is spent. So it is the maximum or the boundary that you can buy, the maximum you can buy with the limited amount of money that you've set aside in this hypothetical budget. It's it's what we call the opportunity set. The opportunity set is the boundary, the maximum. Now, in other words, we can show this visually as a line, and this is the line that shows what you can actually purchase with your available funds. The opportunity set is all of the possible combinations of consumption that someone can afford, whether or not the income is actually spent. So you don't have to spend the maximum amount of your budget. You can spend less than your budget. That's all falls within the opportunity set. Okay. Now, we also need to understand that given the price of goods and given a budget amount, this can be illustrated graphically. So we can think of the budget constraint as a line. Like I said, it separates the possible, which is what's in the opportunity set, from the impossible, which is what's outside of the opportunity set. All right. So let's show that visually here with Alfonso. Alfonso's weekly spending choices. He has two things that he can buy, and that's it. All right, we're keeping things simple. He can just buy two different things, and he's got $10 every single week. He's got a $10 budget, and he can spend that $10 on either bus tickets or burgers, or both. He can choose both. So he's got $10. Bus tickets are 50 cents each. Burgers are $2 each. So each point on the budget constraint represents a different combination of burgers and bus tickets that cost a total of $10. So the slope of the budget constraint is determined by the relative price of burgers and bus tickets. The slope is kind of the way the line slants and slopes. I don't know how to explain it well. I never taught math. So point A here on the graph, the top left point represents 5 burgers and 0 bus tickets. If you got $10, you can get 5 burgers and that's it. You can't afford any more. Each burger costs $2. 2 times 5 is 10. You've maxed out your budget. Point F represents 0 burgers and 20 bus tickets. Each bus ticket's 50 cents. So $10, you got 50 cents, you could buy 20 bus tickets. So the budget constraint is showing us all of the different options that are available to Alfonso when he's making a decision between these two goods. All right, anything outside of this constraint, meaning anything to the top right of that line, anything that exceeds the bounds here, is going to be, I don't know if I can show my mouse cursor. I think it's showing up. Everything past this line to the right and to the top, that is outside the opportunity set. That's impossible. He doesn't have enough money. He's limited by his $10 budget. Everything on this line or inside the line would be the opportunity set. He can afford 2 burgers and no bus tickets. He can afford 5 burgers and no bus tickets. Nothing says he has to spend all $10. He can save some money if he wants to, but this is the total opportunity set that he could possibly buy. All right. So then here's where the concept of opportunity cost comes in. Opportunity cost indicates that what people must give up to obtain what they desire. So it's the cost of one item is the lost opportunity to do or to consume something else. And the opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative. So opportunity cost frames decisions in terms of trade-offs. If I buy this, I can't afford this. If I go to college and I go for my 4-year degree and I'm taking so many classes that I'm full, I can't take anymore. Well, the trade-off is you could have spent that time working and earning money and advancing in your career, but instead you chose to go to college. Well, that's the opportunity cost. The delayed income that you would earn from working, you've delayed that so that you could instead do this thing, right? So opportunity cost, again, it frames decisions in terms of trade-offs. Every decision has an opportunity cost. For Alfonso, the opportunity cost of a burger is the 4 bus tickets that he would have to give up, right? If every burger is $2 and every time he buys a burger, he spends $2, well, that's $2 that he can't spend on 4 bus tickets. So the true cost of one burger is, you could say, equal to 4 bus tickets. And we need to think about that, not just the price tag, but also what we give up in order to purchase the item. So let's think about that a little bit more. All right, so let's make it a little bit more concrete. When you choosing one more burger, which costs $2, means giving up 4 bus tickets, each of which costs 50 cents. So the true cost of one burger, we can say, is 4 bus tickets. Now, we can think of this as an exchange. The budget constraint shows how we can exchange one good for another within our available budget. We're not saying that we can't buy both burgers and bus tickets in some combination, which is B, C, D, and E on the graph shows some combination of us buying both. All right. The budget constraint here and the opportunity costs are illustrating that every choice has a trade-off. That's what we're really getting to. Now, I want you to think about the math that happens behind the budget constraint. There is an equation at play here. And the equation for any budget constraint is going to be that the budget equals the price of the first item times the quantity of that item that you want to buy, plus the price of the second item times the quantity of that second item. So in Alfonso's case, the budget constraint is equal to $10 budget equals $2 per burger times the quantity of burgers plus 50 cents per bus ticket times the quantity of bus tickets. So with a little bit of algebra, we can actually turn this around into what we consider the equation for a line. And again, this is a line. We saw it graphically. It is a line. The equation for a line is y equals b plus m times x. M times x. Y is the quantity of burgers and x is the quantity of bus tickets. And so we can use this equation to help us calculate and then graph that budget constraint. So let's see what that looks like. First, we need to simplify Alfonso's budget constraint into that equation for a line. And we can start by multiplying both sides of the equation by 2. And so that's what's happening in the first line here in red. This gives us 20 equals $4 times the quantity of burgers plus 1 times the quantity of bus tickets. So effectively what we've just done here is we've taken that 50-cent bus ticket and we've turned it into a whole bus ticket or a whole number. One times the bus ticket gives us 1 bus ticket is basically what we're saying. So we've put everything, nothing's in fractions anymore, nothing's in decimals anymore. That was the first step. All right. Now, then what we need to do is subtract that 1 bus ticket. Now we have a whole number there, that 1 bus ticket from both sides of the equation. So that's going to remove it from the right side of the equation entirely. If we subtract a bus ticket from the right side of that equation, they cancel each other out. On the left side, that's going to give us 20 minus a bus ticket, okay? Or the quantity of bus tickets that we decide to buy. Then we can divide each side by 4 to yield the answer that is 5 minus 0.25 times the quantity of bus tickets equals the quantity of burgers. So now burgers is framed as a whole item on the right side. And if we flip that around, flip the left on the right part of the equal sign, we get the quantity of burgers equals 5 minus 1/4 times the quantity of the bus ticket. Right? So we basically just converted this budget constraint into the equation for a line, and this allows us to calculate the actual points on the constraint. So let's take a look at some of the points and see how they relate to the graph here. If we actually decided to, say we want 1 burger, 2 burgers, 3 burgers, 4 burgers, whatever it is, we could use this equation to say, well, if I want 2 burgers, all right, 2 would be equal to 5 minus 0.25 times the quantity of bus tickets. So we have to figure out how many bus tickets will make it where 5 minus 0.25 times that quantity equals 2 burgers. It's effectively the math. It's just a little bit of algebra. You're not going to need to worry too much about it. But once we do that math, we can actually put it into a table here. So points A through F are all the possible combinations of the quantity of burgers and then therefore the quantity of bus tickets. And those are the exact same numbers that we see graphed on the budget constraint. So we're expressing this idea as a line graphically. That's all we're doing here. Okay, everything within that line is the opportunity set. Everything past that is impossible. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources for anything past that. All right, so then the slope, when we want to interpret the slope of a budget constraint always shows the opportunity cost of the good on the horizontal axis. So for Alfonso, the slope is negative 0.25, meaning that for every bus ticket that he buys, he has to give up 1/4, 0.25 of a burger. To put it another way, for every 4 bus tickets he buys, he gives up 1 burger. We can also calculate the slope as the price of bus tickets divided by the price of burgers, which is 50 cents per bus ticket divided by $2 per burger, which again gives us the 0.25. Now, we can quickly determine the opportunity costs just by dividing those two prices. Now, the negative sign shows that the only way to get more of one good is to give up some of the other, as we already stated previously. That's the trade-off. So this is just a visual demonstration, basically. Now, in many cases, when we think about opportunity cost, in many cases, we refer to opportunity cost as the price. We refer to it in US dollars terms. Now, it can be more than that, though. But think about it. For example, if your cousin buys a new bicycle for $300, well, then that $300 measures the amount of other consumption that they have foregone. They could have taken that $300 and bought anything else for $300. So that is the opportunity cost, $300. But sometimes the price, as measured in dollars, might not accurately capture the true opportunity cost, such as when there are time costs involved. So, for instance, the opportunity cost of attending college includes not just the price tag of tuition and the price tag of books and the price tag of room and board, but it also might include the lost earnings from not working at a paying job while you're going to college. And so that's an additional opportunity cost because of your time commitment. So the price that we pay is only one part of the total opportunity cost. We really need to account for all of the potential costs of any decision. Okay. Now, let's consider marginal decision making. So how do we make decisions along our budget constraint? Well, that's where the idea of marginal decision making comes in. Marginal decision making means that making choices by comparing additional benefits and costs. Now, marginal analysis involves examining what are the benefits and what are the costs of choosing a little more or a little less of a good. For example, should Alfonso choose to consume a little more or a little less of those burgers and those bus tickets? The optimal choice is when the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost. So Alfonso would choose a mixture of burgers and bus tickets based on the concept called utility. And utility is a vague thing. There's no way to say this is the amount of utility. You can't do it. Utility is measured by satisfaction or usefulness or value that one obtains from consuming goods and services. Now, there's no way to define that because what Alfonso values might be very different from what you might value or from what I might value. The satisfaction that he gets from that burger might be very different from the satisfaction that someone else would receive. The satisfaction from that bus ticket might be very different from the satisfaction of another bus ticket holder. And so the decisions, we make our decisions based on this extra benefit or the cost of making that choice, and we use our subjective evaluation. Subjective meaning it's not objective. It's up to us individually to make a determination of value, and we assign that value to the items to help us make our marginal analysis decision. So let's talk about utility just a little bit more. There is this law called the law of diminishing marginal utility, which states that as a person receives more of a good, the additional or marginal utility from each additional unit of that good starts to decline. So, for example, the first burger, that's going to provide a high level of utility because it's satisfying hunger. The second burger is going to help, right? If you want to eat 2 burgers. The third burger, you're starting to feel pretty full. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who can eat 3 burgers in one go, but by the 4th or even the 5th burger, well, now you're just putting it in the fridge because you can't eat 5 burgers. So you're buying something that you're not even going to be able to consume right away. And then maybe you won't even want it once it's a day old. And so the utility, the satisfaction that you get as those number of units increase is less and less and less. That's the law of diminishing marginal utility at work. All right, it's showing you as each additional unit you have, it becomes less enjoyable, less satisfactory, less utility that you get. So this is a really important concept because it helps us to understand why consumers balance trade-offs, and they do it to maximize satisfaction. Customers don't want to overconsume one item to the point that the additional satisfaction they receive is greatly diminished. And this is because there are other options available. We use this idea of utility to understand the trade-offs that people are willing to make along the budget constraint. Okay? Now, we're going to shift focus to this idea of sunk costs. So sunk costs are costs that were incurred in the past and they cannot be recovered. You cannot get that money back. You cannot get that time back. So economics tells us to ignore sunk costs. Decisions should focus on current and future costs and benefits, not sunk costs from the past that are irredeemable. So for example, let's say you're halfway through watching a bad movie. So should you stay and waste 90 minutes? Or do you leave and spend that time in a better way? Well, the money you already spent on the ticket is a sunk cost, and the money or the time you've already invested into the movie is a sunk cost, and those being sunk costs should not factor into your decision, but people have a hard time doing this because they think, well, maybe the movie will get better. Maybe it'll improve. Or, what else am I going to do? Economically, what you already spent on that movie ticket, the time you've already put into the movie, shouldn't factor into your decision. Now, bigger picture, imagine a firm that just launched a new product and now, they spent a lot of money on it. They've done R&D, they've done, market research, but they're just finding it's not gaining traction. It's doing poorly. So should the firm stop manufacturing this product that they've invested all this time into? The painful lesson of sunk costs is that we really should ignore our past errors and make decisions based on what will happen in the future. So sunk costs, sometimes the answer is cut our losses, Now, that's a hard pill to swallow. And there are some problems with this. And we're going to address those problems in section 2.3. So keep that in the back of your mind because not everybody is in agreement on this. Why economically, this is what we should do, but there are other considerations. So now, last thing to mention here in the real world, we are not just choosing between two products that fit nice and neat on an x-axis and a y-axis the same way that we showed with Alfonso, right? Modern consumers choose among thousands of goods. If you walk into the grocery store, they have thousands of options. You got all these different SKUs. You could fill up your buggy with 100 different things and go back and get another buggy full of 100 other different things. And so how do we draw that line? It's very easy to draw the line when there's only two options. It's this or it's this. But when you have thousands of possible products that you could buy, that's a lot more complicated. And so we need more rigorous mathematics to do something like that. And we're not going to focus on that in this class. This is just a basic economics class. Okay, we're not going to focus on that. I do want to let you know that if you decide to continue your education in economics, you will probably take a class that goes into some of these more advanced mathematic techniques. And I think one of those classes might be called econometrics. Could be wrong about that. But anyway, we're at a good point here. This is where I'm going to stop with this video. In the next video, we're going to address the same kind of problem with the budget constraint, but we're going to look at it more from a societal standpoint with the production possibilities frontier. And that's, think macro level. Think, what should a nation produce? What should the United States of America, what should we produce? What should we invest in? That's bigger picture stuff rather than, what your budget is for your household purchases. So that's where we're heading. I'll see you all on that one. Appreciate you.